Alright, what is going on YouTube? It is me, Childish Brandino, and welcome back to the 4th annual My Favorite Albums of the Year. This year we're going to be doing 2022, as of course it is 2022, and I actually have a longer list this year than I did last year. This year we have about 12 albums on the list, plus the honorable mentions, which will be a separate list. I'm going to go ahead and put my Spotify Wrapped up on the screen right now. I listened to a lot more music this year, and I'm very happy with my Spotify Wrapped this year. And before we get into the video, I just want to mention that this is my opinion, and I respect everyone else's opinions on these albums. This is just my opinion on the albums, and music is very subjective, so you may like an album that I don't like, and I may like an album that you don't like. So these are just my opinions, and this is just how I feel about my music this year. So let's get into the video. So before we actually get into the main list, I decided to create something new this year. In previous years, I have mentioned deluxe albums that have released in previous years before the year that I talked about my favorite albums. So I decided to create a separate list for those because I have 3 deluxe albums this year, and technically those albums came out the year before, but then this year is whenever those deluxe versions released. So I'm just going to be talking about the songs that were released on the deluxe, and then we'll move on to the main list. So coming in at the first out of 3 albums on the deluxe list, we have the Slow Rush Deluxe by Tame Impala. So the Slow Rush actually released in 2020. I believe it was like on February 14th, which was on Valentine's Day. I love that album to death. I believe it was my number 1 or number 2 albums of 2020. It was in the top 3 for sure. And then this year, Kevin Parker decided to release the deluxe, which he usually does about 2 years after the first album releases. So instead of calling it deluxe, it's usually the B-sides and remixes, but it basically is the deluxe, which includes songs that were going to be on the album and also remixes that were released after the songs came out. So I'm not really going to talk too much about this one. I'm just going to mention that I literally love every song that was on here. So I'm just going to say my top 3 songs on here are The Boat I Row, No Choice, and Patience, which are the only songs that are on here besides the remixes. As I mentioned in the previous video, I'm going to be giving you guys my top 3 songs out of the album, and then my number 1 most least favorite song, but that's a part of the album. Alright, so coming in at the second deluxe album, we have Inside Deluxe by Bo Burnham. The first Inside released in 2021, and then he decided to release the deluxe version along with like a YouTube extended version of the Netflix special. I'm also not going to talk too much about this, so I'm just going to give you my top 3. So whenever I talk about my top 3 from the deluxe albums, it is only the songs that were included on the deluxe. I'm not going to talk about the original songs that were on the original album. I'm only going to give you guys the top 3 songs I like. I'm not going to give you guys the one that's my least favorite. My top 3 for Inside Deluxe is going to be 1985, The Future, and Spider. Alright, so coming in at the third and final deluxe album, we have the Melodic Blue Deluxe by Baby Keem. I'm also not going to talk too much about this, but this the original album came out in 2021, which I saw Baby Keem this year, which was really interesting. It was so much fun. It was very hectic too, but I met a lot of awesome people there. I was very happy about that. So here are some clips on the screen from that concert, and I would say my top 3 for this album is probably Bank Account with Lil Uzi Vert, Naked Freestyle, and Kill Streaks. Alright, so now we're going to get into the main list, which we have 9 albums except for the top 3. Before the top 3, you know we always do the honorable mentions. So coming in at number 9, we have Tell Me That It's Over by Wallows. This album at first didn't really have a big impact on me. I only liked a couple of the singles, and then when the album came out, I wasn't really too sure how I felt about it. I saw Wallows in May of this year, and this was actually the first concert that I passed out at. I was there at 9 a.m. It was just an open field. It was so hot that day, and just when the opener came out, I just passed out whenever she finished her set, and then I was fine after that, and I was able to watch the Wallows performance, but it just kind of set the mood for the rest of the night, and I didn't really have that much of a good time as I wanted to have because of that, but I still enjoyed the performance. And the album, for me, in my opinion, this album isn't as good as their previous album along with their spring EP, but there are still some good songs on here. So my top 3 songs from this album is probably going to be Hurts Me, At the End of the Day, and Hard to Believe. And my least favorite from Tell Me That It's Over is probably going to be Guitar Romantic Search Adventure. Alright, coming in at number 8, we have Rom Com by Jakey. This album is amazing, and I've been waiting for it for such a long time. This album, I believe, was supposed to come out in January or February of this year. but then Jakey had some issues with his mental health and decided to push the date a little bit, and by a little bit I mean a lot. It didn't come out until like a few weeks ago, and it was definitely well worth the wait. He teased the song called Drive Off a Bridge, which I've been like listening to the snippet. It's literally probably like 30 seconds. He teased it at the end of one of his music videos from last year, and I've been just listening to the snippet over and over again, waiting for the full release, and it is the opening track on the album, and I'm so happy that it's on the album and it's fully released now because I can listen to it whenever. If you guys don't know who Jakey is, he is a YouTuber known as Nakey Jakey. He makes some awesome content. You guys should go check him out. And my top 3 songs off of this album are probably going to be Drive Off a Bridge, Like Totally Freak Me Out, and Tommy Hanks. And my least favorite from rom-com is probably going to be Fathead. Alright, so coming in at number 7, we have The Forever Story by JID or JID, whichever ones you want to call him. Everyone seems to really love this album, and a lot of people think this is album of the year, but in my opinion, I don't think it is, but it is still an amazing album. But yeah, he opened up for J. Cole back in 2017 when I went to the For Your Eyes Only tour, and this is a really good album from start to finish. I would probably say my top 3 songs on here are Surround Sound, Crack Sandwich, and Dance Now. And my least favorite from The Forever Story is probably going to be Money. Alright, so coming in at number 6, we have Gemini Rights by Steve Lacy. Yes, I know what you guys are thinking, the TikTok album and stuff, but that's not why I like it. I actually don't have TikTok. But I listened to Bad Habit whenever it came out as a single, and I really enjoyed the song, and then it just kind of blew up out of nowhere. So I don't really like it as much anymore, but I would probably have to still put it in my top 3 because I really liked it when it first came out. I really do think this is a great album from start to finish. I didn't really know he released the album until the day of, and whenever I saw some of my favorite artists post it, so I decided to listen to it, and it's actually a really good album, so if you guys haven't listened to it, go ahead and check it out. My top 3 songs on here are probably going to be Static, Helmet, and Buttons. I'm going to go with those 3. If I exclude Bad Habit, if I want to include it, I'll just include it. It'll be the top 4. And then my least favorite song on here is probably going to be Mercury. I know that was a very popular song on the album, and it released as a single before, but I really wasn't a big fan of it, and I still aren't. Maybe it'll grow on me and stuff, but as of right now, it's probably my least favorite on the album. Coming in at number 5, we have Smithereens by Joji. This year, I decided to travel to Atlanta to go see Joji in concert with Jace. If you guys haven't checked that vlog out, make sure to check it out. It was a very good concert, and I was looking forward for this album to release, and it released, I believe, like a few weeks after I saw Joji in concert. This album is good, but it was kind of underwhelming compared to his previous albums. Like, I love Nectar. That is one of my favorite albums of all time, and this was just such a downgrade from that album. Yes, there are amazing songs on here, but the album is only 24 minutes long. There are 9 songs, and the song Yukon Interlude is literally longer than a bunch of other songs that should be interludes. So I am very happy with the album, but also it was very underwhelming. My number 1 song of the year was Glimpse of Us. It said I listened to it the most the day it came out, and I believe I listened to it like 70 something times, I believe. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I saw him this year. Make sure to check out that vlog. And probably my top 3 songs of this album is Feeling Like the End, Die For You, and Before the Day Is Over. My least favorite song on here is probably going to be Blah 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 Demo. That's probably the one song that I don't listen to as much as the others. I don't know, maybe it'll grow on me one day. So coming in at number 4, we have Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. This album was something else. We've all been waiting for a Kendrick album for, I think it's about
1,855 days.
And I remember listening to this album on my way home from, I believe I was coming home from a hockey game, and the album dropped at midnight, and I listened to it instantly. I was kind of underwhelmed at first with the album because it's very different from Kendrick's previous work. I still believe We Cry Together is the best song on the album. A lot of people disagree because it's like just arguing, but I just love the art form of it. So this year I saw Kendrick Lamar on the Big Stepper tour with my really good friend Johnny. I believe we saw him in July, but that was a really good concert. Baby Keem opened. That was my second time seeing him this year, and also Tana Leone opened, which that was also my second time seeing him this year because he opened up for Baby Keem when I saw him in March. But yeah, that was a really good concert, and at first I didn't really care for the album, but as I got closer to the concert, I kept listening to it more, and then each song kind of grew on me a little bit more. So my top 3 songs for this album is probably going to be We Cry Together, Father Time, and N95. My least favorite song on this album is probably going to be Mother I Sober. That song didn't really grow on me, and it still hasn't, and maybe eventually it will, because it took time for the album to grow on me, so maybe it'll grow on me, but as of right now, it's my least favorite. Alright, so before we get into the top 3, we're gonna do our, usual honorable mentions, which today we have 5 honorable mentions, so let's go ahead and get into it. So with the honorable mentions, I don't actually hate the albums, I just think they weren't really good enough to be in the main list. So I'm not gonna give you guys my least favorite, because there's gonna be a lot of songs that I don't like on the album, but I will give you guys my most favorite song. So with the first honorable mention, we're gonna be talking about SZA's most recent album, SOS. Probably gonna get hated on for this, but I didn't really like the album. I believe it's a way too long of an album, and I believe there's too many genre switches in the album, which kind of makes it very confusing and to where like the direction of SZA was going, because it seems like she just had a bunch of songs from over the years, because her last album was Control in 2017, and it just seems like she had all those songs over the years just piled up, just like wondering what to do with them, and just decided to put them all in one big album. So I'm not really a huge fan of the album as of right now, which that could change, because the album is very fresh. It just came out a few days ago, but as of right now, I'm not really a huge fan of it, and I need to make this video in time. So next year, if I do end up loving this album, I'll let you guys know for sure when I do my top albums of 2023. But my favorite song from this album is probably gonna have to be Low. That's the one song. I mean, there's 2 songs. It's like Low and Kill Bill. Those are the 2 that I've really like grabbed onto, but I believe Low is probably my favorite song on the album as of right now. Alright, so for the second honorable mention, we have Selena Moonchild Mixes. I am a huge fan of Selena. I love her work. I love the show. I love the movie. I'm just a really big fan of Selena. So I decided to check out her posthumous album when it came out. I enjoyed the single, which was Como Te Quiero Yo A Ti. I loved that song, but everything else, like, I wasn't really a huge fan of. I tried listening to it all, but like it just didn't really work for me, and it was probably because it's a posthumous album. So I tried giving it a chance, and I just want to say rest in peace, Selena. And my number 1 song on this album is probably going to be Como Te Quiero Yo A Ti. For the third honorable mention, we have Honestly Nevermind by Drake. Everyone was waiting for this album to come out, and then whenever it dropped at midnight, everyone was so confused, because it's basically like house music, and I love how people are trying to say it's like Forever 21 music, which is kind of funny. But it's not a horrible album. I just don't think it is like for Drake, because everyone's so used to his like rap style, so they didn't like the album, obviously, because it's very different. But I like it when artists try to expand on things, which I believe was good for Drake. There's one thing about this album that I don't like, is every single song is a house song, but then you have Jimmy Cooks at the end, which is just like a pure rap song, which is really confusing, and I don't think it should be on the album. I think it should either be on Her Loss, or it should just be a single. So again, I don't necessarily think this is a bad album. I think it's a good album for like the house genre, but for a rap album, obviously it's not good, because it's not even rap. So my favorite song on here is probably gonna have to be Massive. Alright, so for the fourth honorable mention, we have Drake again with Her Loss, and this is Drake and 21 Savage. I was really excited for this album. A lot of people like it. It didn't really hit me as much. There is one song on here that I just really hate, and I don't like that on Circo Loco that they used Daft Punk as a sample, and also like just started talking about like getting head and stuff, like interpreting the song of One More Time by Daft Punk. I just didn't really like those 2 mixes. So I just really think that Circo Loco is not a good song. I hate the beat. I hate the way they use the sample, and just the way that Drake interpreted the song. But yeah, this album hasn't really grown on me still. I've given it multiple chances. There's a few songs on here that I enjoy, but like they're not in my daily listen. So my number 1 song on here is probably gonna have to be Spin 'Bout You. Coming in at the final honorable mention at number 5, we have I Know Nigo by Nigo. This was a pretty good album, but I don't think it's good enough to be in the main list, only because I really enjoyed the singles, but then when the full album came out, I really didn't like some of the songs on there. There's probably like 3 songs that I like on here, which is probably gonna be Come On Let's Go, Heavy, and Lost and Found Freestyle. So yeah, there's not really much to talk about this album other than my favorite song on here is probably Come On Let's Go. I'm kind of sad that Tyler didn't perform it whenever I saw him this year. I believe we got Smuckers instead of Come On Let's Go, which I would much prefer Smuckers over Come On Let's Go. So here we are in the top 3. Again, the other albums in the earlier list, they were not in order on how I like them. The only ones that are in order on how I like them are the top 3. So coming in at number 3 is May I See Your Future by Denzel Curry. So this album was very hard for me to put in number 3 because I really wanted to put it in number 2, and I was just going back and forth all year with this album in the number 2 spot. But I had to put it in number 2 because I've realized that the number 2 album that I have on the list is, I just listen to it like way more now. This is a really, really good album. I personally think it is Denzel Curry's best, and Denzel Curry actually tweeted out, I believe yesterday, saying that this was his best album in his opinion. A lot of people think Taboo is his best album. I do think that's a really good album, but this one kind of just tops it over. And I just love how every album by Denzel Curry is just different in its own way, and he always knows how to smash it. He's really good with bending genres and everything like that. I loved the single Walkin' instantly when it came out. I listened to that so much this year. I wasn't a huge fan of Zatoichi, but then whenever the album came out, I loved the placing of it on the album, and it fits really well on the album. Just as a single, I wasn't really a huge fan of it. And I also like Troubles with T-Pain. I saw T-Pain this year, which was really cool, but he did not perform Troubles, which I understand. It really wasn't that popular. But yeah, this is a really good album. I also saw Denzel Curry this year. I believe that was in June. I went with Jace. That was a really fun concert, and I enjoyed seeing this album performed. He actually brought out 454 to sing Sanjuro from the album, which was really cool, and we saw him at House of Blues. But yeah, my top 3 songs from this album is probably going to be Worst Comes to Worst, Ain't No Way, and The Smell of Death. My least favorite on this album is probably going to have to be The Ills. I don't really listen to that one that much, but probably The Ills is my least favorite. So coming in at number 2, we have Sing Me a Lullaby, My Sweet Temptation by Suicide Boys. This album is like so good. I believe it is their best album that they've ever released. I didn't really have high hopes for this album because I thought they were gonna like take that TikTok fame and also like put it on the album, but they did not do that at all. They really grew from that and just like really stuck to their roots. I saw Suicide Boys in August, and that is my second most favorite concert of the year. It was so good, so immersive, and I really hope they decide to come back. That was their first time ever performing in Tampa, and they don't really come to Florida that much, but it was a really great concert, and I had amazing seats. So there's just so many songs on here that are my favorite, but it's been really hard to find my top 3. My second most played song of the year is from this album, and that is No Matter Which Direction I'm Going In, I Never Chase These Hoes. I think that is such a good song, and not a lot of people talk about it. But my top 3 songs on here are probably going to have to be No Matter Which Direction I'm Going In, I Never Chase These Hoes, 1000 Blunts, and In Constant Sorrow. In Constant Sorrow is such a great song, but it's also very depressing, just like the lyrics and stuff, but I think that's what makes it really good. I just love the flow of Suicide Boys, especially Ruby in the group. His flow is just always amazing, and it never gets old. It's just so good, and just the way that they flow and just it rolls off the tongue, it's so good. I think my least favorite song in here is probably gonna have to be Eulogy or Ashes of Luxury. Those two are like probably the ones I don't listen to that much. Alright, so coming in at number 1, drum roll please. We have Dawn FM by The Weeknd. When this album first came out, I was not a huge fan of it. What I've realized is albums that you don't like usually with the first listen, and then you end up liking later, end up being like your favorite albums of all time. So I believe this is The Weeknd's best album. I believe it's better than After Hours. A lot of people disagree with that, but this is just my opinion. It was very different, and I thought he was just going for that 80s style like he did with Blinding Lights because that's his most popular song. But that's kind of what I thought at first, but then as I listened to it more, it was just like the whole theme of the album, which fits into like its own thing. It doesn't feel like 80s, but it like also does. It feels like The Weeknd created the 80s. This album is just so good, and I believe this came out in like January. This was the first album of the year, I think, that dropped that I really enjoyed. This came out in like the beginning of January. I think it was like January 6th. And to see that it is still holding up here today is just amazing. And then how do I make Make You Love Me on this album was my third most played song of the year. It's just such a good song. And I also went to Horror Nights this year at Universal Orlando, and they had the Weekend House, which the Weekend House was like all after hours themed, but in the queue they were just playing the album, and it was such an awesome thing to just listen to while you're in the queue, because I love this album so much. But yeah, I saw the Weeknd this year in August, which that was a good concert, but I wasn't really that impressed by his performance. I didn't like that for most of the concert he just kind of like stood in the middle instead of the main stage, which I had seats that were like a better view of the main stage, but he probably did like 2 songs there and then did the rest in the middle, which I didn't really like that. But he also has to get the people that are in the very back, which I understand. But he just, all he really did was just sing. It was a good concert. But I'm so glad I got to see the songs from this album performed live, which was a really good experience. So my top 3 songs for this album are probably going to be How Do I Make You Love Me, Don't Break My Heart, and Less Than Zero. My least favorite song on the album, excluding all of like the storyline stuff and the interludes, is probably gonna be Best Friends. I do like the song, but it's probably the one that I listen to the least out of all of them. So yeah, guys, that is my top albums of 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember, again, this is just my opinion. You guys don't have to agree with me. We're doing pretty good on subscribers. I believe I'm at 1.3k, so if you guys would like to subscribe, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Give the video a like. Comment which albums were your favorite in the comments, and tell me if you agree with some of my picks. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys later.